discoveries in the late 1930s made nuclear weapons a possibility for the first time in history. During World War II, the United States and its allies were afraid that their enemies will develop nuclear weapons first. So, in 1942, they started the Manhattan Project, a secret research effort led by the US government to develop nuclear weapons. The creation and use of nuclear weapons ushered in the nuclear age and growing tension between the United States and the Soviet Union, both armed with nuclear weapons. During the Cold War made the threat of nuclear war a really possibility. Despite progress in reducing nuclear weapons arsenally since the Cold War, the world combined inventory of nuclear warheads remains at a very high level. 9 countries possess roughly 30,150 warheads as of mid-2021. Approximately 91% of all nuclear warheads are owned by Russia and the United States, who each have around 40,000 warheads in their military stockpiles. Globally, the overall inventory of nuclear weapons is declining, but the pace of reduction is slowing compared with the past 30 years. France and Israel have relatively stable inventories, but China, India, North Korea, Pakistan, Russia and United Kingdom are all thought to be increasing their stockpiles.
Nuclear proliferation is defined as the rapid spread or increase of nuclear weapons. It also has a synonymous meaning such as nuclear weapons technology or the distribution of nuclear materials. This refers to possible acquisition of nuclear weapons by armed group or other terrorist organization. Some international relations theories deny that this nuclear proliferation led to an escalation of nuclear conflict. According to American scholar Kenneth Walsh says that the spread of nuclear weapons actually produce peace and stability. And to be sure, a country will create a protective defense so that the safety of its citizens is in control situation.
Method. In this study, we use the secondary data method. Secondary data is data has been collected by a researcher through a primary source collected in the past, where the researcher has collected data for a particular project, then made it available for use by other researchers. Therefore, in this study, the researcher has obtained data from secondary data sources through journals, newspapers, websites, and so on, related to the topics of study. And appropriate and relevant data will be collected and answer the research question.
We have 2 research questions. First, what are the benefits of nuclear weapons proliferation to US and Russia? Second, what are the threats of nuclear proliferation between US and Russia?
Firstly, nuclear weapons have long been assumed to confer certain security and strategic advantages on countries that possess them. The possession of nuclear weapons does seem to confer security benefits. Although countries that have nuclear weapons are involved more often in low-level conflict, their disputes are less likely to escalate to major war, and they are more likely to get the outcomes they want in a crisis involving non-nuclear opponents. Secondly, nuclear could be used when both Russia and US are capable of employing these arms in limited and relatively controlled ways. Such more discriminate usage has long been recognized as a potential way to gain value from nuclear weapons beyond threats of general use. Next, political economy. States build more nuclear weapons because of their country's political economy, whether or not it is globally integrated, which create incentives for proliferation or restraint. Firstly, nuclear weapons will reach the hands of terrorist individuals or groups. Deterrence prevented direct military conflict between US and Russia for many years, and deterrence retains its leverage, but deterrence will not restrain the territories driven by fanatical belief. Once terrorist group acquires nuclear weapons, preventing their detonation on US soil would be extremely difficult. The enormous effort that the US spends on ballistic missile defense is an inexcusable distortion of priorities. Indeed, it is extremely unlikely that territories will ever gain access to ballistic missiles. Secondly, there are significant risks to the spread of nuclear weapons in terms of international peace and stability. Some scholars argue that new nuclear states, large or small, will face the same constraint as previous nuclear powers and be deterred from engaging in provocation or conflict. However, the system that govern nuclear weapon safety and use are extra complex, and because new nuclear powers are not likely to possess the same system of check and controls, the risk of accidents will be higher. The countries now acquiring nuclear weapons may have weakened civilian control.
Conclusion, in the big strategic game, the Russia and America have some reason for modernizing their nuclear force. They want to maintain parity. However, nuclear weapons pose a great threat to humanity. Since their first use, different leaders and organizations have tried to prevent proliferation into additional countries. Despite their efforts, most states than ever before have accurate nuclear weapons. Thus, there are a number of critical action and decisions taken to grab the issue of distribution of such weapons and the regime without the proliferation of the world.